everyone. Good to see you. Happy Saturday. I think we'll begin. Bonnie, we have an announcement about next week. If we could get a mic to her.
Thank you, Alice. Good morning, everybody. Next week, another group is coming in at noon, so we're going to skip over the potluck. There won't be coffee or tea next week, but feel free to bring your own. We will have alms for the monastics, and there'll be one monastic next week. We're going to try to clean up as soon as the monk takes their food, so we can be out of here and have this place nice and cleaned up for the next group that's coming in. There also will be a used Dhamma book exchange on March 21st. So if you've collected books that are just sitting there and you would like to share with other people, please bring them in on March 21st.
Thank you, Bonnie. Our wonderful librarians, Dory and Jessica, are arranging that. I also just want to welcome, we have Lava visiting us from Texas. He comes up here every year on his birthday. Lava, raise your hand so we can embarrass you. There we go. Good. We have Shanika visiting for her first time. Raise your hand, Shanika. We have Svetlana and Mark? Marina? Okay, Marina. Good. Welcome from Oregon, right? Welcome visiting. We have Matthew visiting from Montana. Matthew. And we have Sid, who came back from Bangladesh to be with us. So just a lot of wonderful reunions coming back, and I'm sure there's many people who are visiting for the first or third or umpteenth time that I'm not mentioning, but just maybe hands in Anjali for all those who have come. Additionally, for those who may know already or don't, Allison, for her 50th birthday, is hosting a half-day retreat tomorrow at Blossom Studio from noon to 5 p.m. on aging, sickness, and death. Sorry, just aging and death, no sickness. If you're sick, stay home. But that's at Blossom Studio, and 8050 35th Avenue Northeast, and that information is on our WhatsApp and Discord if you want, and it's just free for all people who want to come. Just show up at noon. So we encourage you to come to that. Ajahn Kovila will be there as well, teaching. Additionally, we just learned that Meiji, who here knows Meiji Panyasiri? She's a good friend of Clear Mountains, a really amazing Dharma teacher. She just got her visa, so she'll probably be visiting us from about mid-May to mid-June. So we're excited about that. We'll get a lot of time with her. Additionally, many of you may know, but we have a weekend retreat in Twisp, May 23rd and 24th in Winthrop. So camping and meditation. And our almsgiving, once again, is Saturday, June 20th, and that'll be a big convergence of many monastics and a celebration of the community. And Bhante Rahula will be visiting us for that period as well and leading a day-long with Ajahn Kovil and myself on the 21st, Sunday. So all those are on Clear Mountain's events calendar if you want. And once again, we've put aside land visits for the moment, and we're going to just move through due diligence on the piece of property that Friends of Clear Mountain has put in an offer on. We're going to hold on land visits for the moment, but on May 2nd, if everything goes through, we'll have a grand finale celebratory visit all together if you want. So, okay. Let's chant together. So in preparation for tomorrow's retreat, let's chant 5 subjects for frequent recollection on page 55. 5 subjects for frequent recollection on page 55. And we are running out of books, so if you came and didn't get a book, either snuggle up to someone with him, or we have a QR code in the back that'll let you scan, and Shia printed these out wonderfully, and get one on your phone. If you're joining us on Zoom or YouTube, the description should have a link, or in the chat, and it's just Amaravati's chanting book, page 55. Andamayam abinha pacho ekana patang banamase Jara Dhammo mi jaranganatito. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. Bayadi Dhammo mi bayadinganatito. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. Marana Dhammo mi marananganatito. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. Sabehi me pihehi mana pehi nana bawo vina bawo. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Kamma sakomi, kamma dayado, kamma yoni, kamma bandhu, kamma patisarano, yang kammang karisami, kalayanang wa papakang wa, tasadayado bhavisami. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Evam amehi abinhang patruvekita bang. Thus we should frequently recollect. Something very grounding about speaking truth, and I've always found it interesting that that's our most melodic chant. So, as many of you know, Ajahn Kovilo and myself are on winter retreat right now, so we're alternating which one of us comes in on Saturdays. But if you ever want to speak at more length, please feel free to come down for Alms Round at 7 a.m. at Pike Place. Check the calendar first. And if you aren't signed up for our online forums, WhatsApp and Discord, that will help you stay up to date on announcements and such. And finally, just appreciating everyone's patience as we expand to capacity at this gym, just making room for one another. And do feel free to bring cushions and such so that you can sit up in the front like all these lovely people and make room for others as well. We'll meditate together for a time. Begin by setting your body upright. You can draw in your lower spine as a bit of a spring, holding your upper vertebrae directly up with dignity. I think we may also have another mic on that's squeaking now and again. I'm not sure where that sound is coming from. Push your top of your... Notice any tension in your forehead and soften it. Your eyes soften. Soften any tension in your jaw. Smile on the inside of your mouth. Soften into your belly and breathe deeply. Then just ask yourself what kind of breathing would feel good right now, and allow the body to respond with a natural rhythm. Now establish just a gentle sense of friendliness towards yourself in this meditation. Just a gentle sense of goodwill. Should always be the backdrop. See if you can find a place to sense the breath where there's a sense of subtle pleasure. You may notice if you allow yourself to breathe from the belly down below the navel. There's a subtle sense of pleasure there. lower dantian. Or you might notice in the heart space, on the central axis of the body down below the heart just a little bit. If you gently place awareness there, there's a sense of gentle pleasure. If you can find it, just allow yourself to breathe from that place. And if you find the mind getting drawn away, you can repeat what we call the 6 R's. Recognize what's drawn you away, name it. Anger, fantasy, thought, worry. Release it. Relax the point of tension in the body, which usually will have manifested often in the forehead or the eyes. Re-smile. Bring a slight smile to the inside of the mouth. Return to your object and repeat. Recognize, release, relax, re-smile, return, repeat. And then reward yourself with an especially delicious breath coming back. as we usually do when sitting in a group or alone. Just take the last few minutes of the sit to develop metta, loving kindness. It can be useful to think of someone sitting next to you or near you. Make your wish specific. May they be well. May they be healthy. May they find peace. The goal is to feel that opening in the heart space, a warmth, sweetness. And then soften those barriers even more in the heart so that it can touch and include all those sitting in this room. Bring them into that warmth. You can even imagine them in a circle around you in a meadow, smiling, if it's helpful. May they be happy, healthy. May they find peace. And then to all beings.
For those who would like to join me in requesting the Dhamma talk, you can turn to page 124, and we can bow 3 times if you like. Chaloka Dipadi Sahampadi Katanjaliam Adiwaram Mayajata Santi Dasata Parajaka Jatika Dese Dudamang Anukampimang Pajang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Hello, everyone. It's been a really nice winter retreat. We're very grateful. And coming back to the core of our duty as practitioners of cultivating the heart and cleansing the citta, the mind, of greed, hatred, and delusion. We can do it in daily life, but remembering the power of formal practice is important for us monastics as well. And who here knows the meaning of the word samadhi? We have any? Okay, good. Any definitions? Anyone feel up for raising their hand and offering a word? Matt? Non-dual experiencing, okay. Sid? Grave. Oh. Oh, that's a bit different. That's good though. Okay, I like it. Okay. One-pointed concentration. Stillness, good. Collectedness. And why do we cultivate samadhi? What's the purpose? This one's harder. Cheryl? So we can practice? Okay. Good. To still the mind so we can know what's happening in the mind. Peter? To see clearly? In the back, Steve? Say it again. Penetrating insight. Okay, good. Yeah. Say it again. Connecting with the higher consciousness. Experiencing wholeness. Those are good. Compassion. Sid? Could never understand what the collecting samadhi could mean. It's all right. No, good. We'll get there. Yeah, this is there's a teacher in Thailand who said the body becomes strong through movement and the mind becomes strong through stillness. And when the citta, which is the word we use in Pali, in Buddhist language for the mind and heart, becomes still, it touches a happiness which the Buddha said was beyond even divine bliss. And to understand that this is a path of pleasure, and that only the mind which is happy and luminous is able to see suffering clearly and let go of it. The Buddha said there's three kinds of happiness. There's external happiness, samisa sukha, which is based on the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, how we feed off the world and each other and sense experience. And not only does that type of pleasure and fulfillment fade quickly, and we have to keep seeking more and more, the hedonic treadmill, it's like drinking salt water. But it's also fragile in that it's predicated on us manipulating conditions around us to be as we hope they would be. And then when our partner doesn't behave like we wish they would, or our child doesn't, or we get injured or have to go to surgery or find ourselves at the end of our life unable to touch sensual pleasure like we used to, then we're bereft. And something in us knows this even now, the fragility of that situation, its precariousness. And so the Buddha raised up another kind of happiness he called Niramisa Sukha, otherworldly happiness, spiritual. And this is the happiness that comes from the cultivation of the luminous heart of samadhi, of loving kindness, of the blamelessness, of the bliss of being blameless. That's a phrase that's echoed with me ever since I read it in the suttas. One becomes sensitive to the pleasure of being blameless, pure sila, purpose. And this happiness is our own. And external conditions can shift, and this is ours even then. There's a small book called With Each and Every Breath, The Last Breath, which is a story of how Longpo Pasano, who's one of our teachers, counseled a man named Jay through death row in San Quentin prison. And how even at the end of his life, he was able to give Jay, who meditated for hours every day, this ability to come and bring the mind to a sense of light. And on the night of his execution, Longpo Pasano was with him the whole time and was able to move with him in his last hours, even towards that final moment. And Jay was able to stay centered and bright. And at midnight, when the execution took place, there was a huge rainstorm, and it just stopped. And all the protesters out in front of the gates were subject to a sudden moment of stillness. So we quiet the mind to find an inner peace which is ours no matter what. And its one fragility is that it's impermanent, like all internal conditions. And so the Buddha held up one final level of happiness, which was nibbana, which is unshakable liberation of heart. And when the mind is calm and sees clearly that what is subject to origination is subject to cessation, Joseph Goldstein has the recollection of that insight arising, which is the insight that arises with the first glimpse of nibbana for many in the suttas. And he said the next thought that arose was, why want anything? And in that moment, the subtle leaning in the next moment that's always there stopped, and he found himself standing. This is not a dour teaching. When we open our hand from its palsied grasping, what we're left with is a palm filled with sunlight. But it takes time, and we have to stop shaking that bottle filled with water and debris and color, and the mind has to become still enough that the debris settles, and we find ourselves staring at a clear mind, a clear heart that can see with wisdom and compassion. Because the heart that is free operates only from those qualities of selflessness and the Brahma Viharas, the boundless abodes. So it sounds pretty great, right? And then there's a saying that to get people to take to sea, you don't have to teach them to build the ship, teach them to love the ocean. I think we find ourselves in an opposite situation. We know the ocean sounds pretty great. We're not quite sure how to build the ship. And this is one difficulty with how samadhi, unification of mind, has been taught in the West, is often we're told to bring attention to one point, spotlight awareness. And because these teachings often were formulated in the context of countryside, of people who've lived for years with minds very able to concentrate, weaving baskets, tending to simple tasks, meaningful tasks, but not overcome with our level of momentum with thought, which we have inherited in our current culture. that these teachings of just bringing the mind to one point, the breath or a word, doesn't work for us. And we find ourselves trying our best and yet faced with a dryness and a lack of progress in samadhi practice. Who can relate to this to some extent? Yes. And then often the teaching in the West is swung the other way, where it says, well, that didn't work, so let's just be open to whatever comes up. You know, just be there for everything with with a non-distinguishing awareness. And it's true we can receive the echoes of past karma, the thoughts that arise without judgment, but there is a place for effort. And Alice Gopnik, who's a researcher at the University of Berkeley, they did research on the different sorts of awareness. There's spotlight awareness, which fixates attention on one object. That's sort of like fixating awareness on the breath. And then there's lantern awareness, which opens and touches whatever's in the moment. But there's a third kind of awareness they found in this study called play awareness. Play awareness. And it read completely different. And this is the type of awareness we want to cultivate in meditation. Ajahn Jeff notes that we don't learn about eggs by just staring at an egg. You make an omelet, you make a quiche. You see what can happen when you pressure the mind and see what happens when you play with it. And the key component of this is interest and engagement and exploration. I think an interesting simile, who here has heard of AlphaGo and AlphaZero? So these were the first AI models to defeat the world champion in Go. And initially, AI was often trained as algorithmic programming, which means you just give it a process. Someone makes this move, and so you make this move. And what they did with AlphaZero was they just had it play itself for millions of games, and it got more and more creative until it was the most powerful entity in Go playing that had ever existed, which was an accomplishment for it, I suppose. And yet, this is the situation we find ourselves in, is self-play, reinforcement learning, because the defilements, the hindrances, these blockages to calm, sensual desire, anger, sloth and torpor, doubt, restlessness, there's something in us which does not want to quiet, which is afraid to quiet, which is afraid to let go. There's a beautiful poem that says the hardest thing you can do is tell a person to walk away from a stone that they've been pushing their whole life. How we know our shape is the pressure we put, is the things we carry. And what are we when we've let that go? What are we without that strong, constantly reified sense of self? The self forms in the shadow of our desires, of our tensions, of our intentions. It's not easy to let go. Ajahn Jeff says the last thing you can take from someone is their suffering. So the defilements don't want us to find calm. And they have all our intelligence at their disposal. And so we find ourselves playing back and forth with the enlightenment factors of luminosity of heart, mindfulness, joy, tranquility. These counterbalanced against the hindrances. And meditation is this. Who here has discovered a meditation technique and you come out of the meditation and you're like, I figured it out. That's it. All right. Done. And then 2 days later, you're like, huh. Yeah. My meditation journals are hilarious. I fall for that trap again and again. Because you find a metta phrase or something, and then the defilements catch on. And this is okay, actually. This is how we develop a skill. This is how we learn the reward signal of pleasure, of stillness. But it means that we need to conceive of meditation as a game, as playful awareness, as interesting. And one of the issues with how modern meditation techniques are often taught is you're told to bring awareness to one object. And how do you play with that? How do you play with just a word or an instruction to stay with the breath at the nose? It's like we're given these minds which are a classroom full of 8-year-olds, and you give them a block of wood and expect them to sit there quietly. And if anyone here has been in a classroom of 8-year-olds, I mean, we all have at some point probably, it does not work. So what happens if before you do that, you give them more to do? Many here will have had the experience of being told to do that, to not control the breath. And then you find your whole being clenches around the breath, and you find it's really hard to breathe suddenly. You've been doing this all your life, and yet, suddenly. And Ajahn Thanissaro notes that this is because we have so much momentum towards intention, towards doing. If you try just to stop, it moves under the surface and clenches things up below. Much better to work with that intention explicitly as an ally. So what happens if you conceive of meditation as a playground? Increase your training data. Allow the kids to run outside and do a wholesome team builder and then have them sit down. And the roadmap the Buddha gave us, which I come back to again and again, is the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta. Who here knows this discourse? Okay. So there's a sutta where the Buddha says, what monks is mindfulness of breathing? And one well-intentioned venerable named Venerable Aritta, I don't know if he raises his hand, but he says, mindfully I breathe in and mindfully I breathe out. And the Buddha says, Aritta, that is mindfulness of breathing, I do not deny it. But as to how mindfulness of breathing is practiced in full, listen and I will speak. And then he lays out these 16 steps, which are guideposts, and allow room to play with the breath and understand what's happening and develop this as a skill. Meditation is a skill. And if we are managed to cultivate it, not only do we come back to the body where intuition lies, but also a true wealth of happiness that is ours and which we can gift to others, where we stop having to feed off the world and become able to bless it. I've sat next to monastics with profound samadhi, and it radiates off them in cool waves. It's astounding. Or there's something called in Chinese language, the Shen, this quality of heart and mind which shines out of the eyes, and you see this in beings. You can touch it. So the Anapanasati Sutta, to go through it, it says first, it's 4 sets of 4, and we won't go through all of them, but they roughly overlay, and this is one of the beauties of the Buddhist teachings, is this cohesion or coherence of teaching where these teachings overlay one another. The Anapanasati overlays onto the 4 Satipatthana foundations of mindfulness, which roughly overlay under the 4 jhanas, which fulfill the 7 enlightenment factors. It's nested Russian dolls again and again. The teaching is holographic. Each teaching holds the others. And the Buddha says one first, going to a tree, under a tree, or to an empty hut, establishes mindfulness to the fore. Breathing in long, one knows I breathe in long. Breathing out long, one knows I breathe out long. Breathing in short, one knows I breathe in short. Breathing out short, one knows I breathe out short. So very simple at the beginning. But note the preparatory stages. If you don't have an empty hut or a tree, it's okay. But to note that one of the enlightenment factors is passaddhi, tranquility of body. And if you're expecting to become calm, we need to re-inhabit the body. Ajahn Amaro often says, look, we conceive of ourselves as these heads dragging these bodies along below us. And there's a great quote from The Dubliners by James Joyce that said, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body, viewing his thoughts and actions with sidelong, suspicious glances. So let's come back into the torso. And really finding a way to do this, either exercise is really key, or cold showers, I recommend this often, or qigong, some way to re-inhabit the body. These are really important. If I have a cold shower nearby, which I don't here in the gym, I will never meditate without first having taken a cold shower. It's so effective in dropping awareness into the body again. Posture is really key. You can imagine the back of the spine. You'll find yourself slumping. Keep that upright. Imagine a string drawing up. And then in each of these pathways to samadhi, coming to the breath and letting it coalesce around often a point by the nose. And as we did in the guided meditation, just inviting yourself, what type of breathing would feel good right now? And relaxing tension in the face. And if you've played a violin before, the Buddha compared mindfulness of breathing to a wood turner turning wood, which is very similar to how a bow touches a string. And you can conceive of that this whole time. This is your center point, and there's a bow subtly just touching a string point. And if you've played violin, you know if you really hold tightly with a tense grip, your playing is rough. So you want to relax, relax, and let go of thoughts. And what you might find is this progression goes from the breath feeling long to short, and that's it becomes more subtle and quiet. The next phase, and you can help this by counting the breath if you want. You can have a meditation word like love, anything like that. But for many, this is, like I said, too narrow. And it's useful to have a secondary object which is more broad. And I think of this, if you're playing a violin, you have the bow, that's there. In all 16 steps of the Anapanasati Sutta, the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta, there is this notion of the breath, it anchors you. But there's also these other steps of becoming sensitive to the body, sensitive to pleasure, sensitive to rapture. So this secondary object is, I think of as the fingers playing. And it can be more active, and this is where you get to be creative. What do you find helpful to go with that breath? A very safe bet is loving kindness. At the start of a meditation, if you're feeling really active, you can really cultivate a perception of loving kindness. Bring to mind, we've talked about these techniques many times, but people you love who make the heart leap, get the warm glow in the heart going. And after a time of that activity, you'll find you can let go of that and bring the breath to the foreground again. Your mind will tire of the more active, expansive object and be willing to come back to just the breath again. And it's like when you play an instrument, you can trust this process of back and forth, where sometimes you're paying attention to the bow and the string, and sometimes you're paying attention to the finger work. And you can trust it to go back and forth. And often the other object will be in the background of your awareness with 10%, whereas 90% of your awareness will be with either the breath or that loving kindness sense. Or you can scan the body. And Bhante Analayo brings to mind with the Satipatthana, the mindfulness of body, just moving slowly from the top of the head down around the body, over the shoulders, down the arms, down the body, noting skin slowly as you breathe, noticing the sensations. Then start again and notice the flesh, the muscle, the sinews. And then do a third, noticing the bones, noticing the sensations and how the breath feels. And then when you come back to the breath, there's also a sense of still understanding the scope of the body there. Like being a spider at the center of a web, but aware of the whole web. It's as if you've come to the center of a cabin at the breath, but instead of coming right to the center of the cabin, sitting down in the dark and expecting yourself to be calm, you've moved around the cabin, you've cleaned up things, you've opened the windows, you've explored. Or you can think of, if the perception of space is helpful for you, you can do that. You can move through kind of those three chambers where you can breathe in that lower chamber of the body and just see if you can cultivate a sense of earthy nourishment, middle and upper, but then come back to center. And this is the third step of being aware of the whole body. Breathing in, I will train thus. Breathing in, I'll train thus, I will be aware of the whole body. Breathing out, I'll train thus, I'll be aware of the whole body. And there's been a debate since early times around if this meant the whole body or the whole body of the breath at the tip of the nose, the whole length of it. And what I find is they turn into one and the same. As the mind calms, you'll both become aware of the whole body. But also, when the mind kind of gently comes back to the breath, it'll become more and more subtle, where you're aware of the whole length of it, like a thin thread, or like the bow touching the strings the whole way through, subtly. And you can trust that process back and forth until they almost merge. And the fourth step in this first tetrad of the body is one breathes in and out, calming the bodily activity. And I think of this as not just inviting the breath to become more and more subtle, but as you explore the body, you'll notice tension points. Each thought you have manifests first as a point of tension and clenching, often in the forehead and the eyes. And a big part of your task is just to release it, and trust. Trust the mind to let go of it and come back to the natural flow of the breath, in and out. Calming the body. At this point, there's a key jump to rapture, piti. One trains thus, I will breathe in sensitive to piti, rapture. One trains thus, I will breathe out sensitive to piti, rapture, P-I-T-I. And it's a problematic word because it really means refreshment. It comes from the word to drink, and it's a sense of soaking in something you've been so hungry for. You might know this sensation in meditation. Often people can touch it through loving kindness, where you'll bring up that glow of loving kindness, and there'll be a sense of the heart was so dry, like, oh, I really needed this, and you're kind of soaking it in. The Buddha uses the simile, in part, of a bathman or bathman's apprentice kneading water into a ball of bath powder so that it's drenched, steeped, and pervaded in the joy and rapture born of seclusion. So, as we move through the body, as we let go of those tension points, as we cultivate loving kindness, you're kneading this sense of joy into the mind. And there's a few ways of kind of making this transition. One, and this is what Shyla Catherine and Lee Brasington teach, is after the mind has become calm enough that you're able to just to hold that quiet note on the breath, or maybe a sense of the whole body breathing for quite a long time, usually the breath, that you want to transition awareness to pleasant Vedana, pleasant sensation. So one very accessible one is if you find yourself calm, just raise the edges of the mouth slightly into a little smile and sense the sense of uplift and brightening. And bring awareness to that sense of uplift and brightening. And I know it can be annoying when you look at the person meditating next to you and they're just grinning. But a gentle uplift. And when we give attention to something, especially with a calm mind in Buddhist psychology, it amplifies that. So if the mind's already somewhat one-pointed on the breath and you move that awareness to the sense of pleasure and uplift, it's like putting a mic to a speaker. A feedback loop begins, and you find just the pleasure, the happiness, the uplift, the brightness grows and amplifies. And if you lose track again, come back to the breath, and then come back to the pleasant sensation, and amplify and brighten again. Often people will find it in the palms of the hands, a sense of pleasure. There's also often a sense of pleasure hidden in the hips on the outside. It's kind of a hidden place people don't know. Whatever you do, you can just sort of bring that brightness, and you still have the breath there. It's always there in the Anapanasati Sutta, but notice the sense of nourishment, of brightening. Or, and this is like you're noticing kind of you're beginning to notice the music that's being played by the violin. Or for some of you, that might not be as accessible, but the sense of loving kindness, that secondary object, or the sense of the whole field of the body, a gentle vibration, will be quite pleasant. And you can focus on that instead. Give awareness to that warmth in the heart and let it brighten and grow. Or as the mind becomes calm, you might notice a sense of light. We call this the light nimitta. And people miss it because they're looking for a ball of light. But often what it is just a sense of the whole visual landscape brightening and the mind rising. And give awareness to that bright light and let it grow. And what you should notice is the sense of soaking in something you've been hungry for, you've been nourished by. And this leads to pleasure, which is once that piti, that rapture, which is like drinking in that pleasure. Once it's pervaded you, the mind is content and happy. And you find yourself just able to kind of exist with the breath, but also with a sense of well-being, of pleasure, of brightness, sated and satiated. And what can happen at this point is the mind can become very subtle because it'll begin to let go of all these perceptions, even the subtle residual model of the body it's been holding. And it can be quite disorienting. And this is the step 7 and 8 of becoming sensitive to mental activity and calming mental activity. And there's a phase here where it's almost like your whole job is to notice when some impulse to control, a knot, a tension, and a bodily thought come up and release, release, release. Calm that and trust. Because intention becomes less and less important. Release, release. And what happens is often that sense of brightness will grow, or the sense of subtlety at the tip of the nose will grow, of breath. And often they'll grow oscillating back and forth, where you'll find the mind coalescing onto this subtle point of the breath, and then it'll feel bright and expand and buoy up, and then trust it, and then it'll come back and sublimate again. And often it'll go back and forth until they've kind of merged into one refined experience. But your job is to let go. It's as if you have a parchment with writing on it, and the parchment begins to glow, and you can let go of the writing, let all those patterns, all those tension points fade until you're left just with parchment, bright, luminous, white, the clear mind. And then the next steps are one becomes sensitive to the mind, gladdens the mind, and concentrates the mind. And the thing is, when this mind has become empty of thought, often it seems intimidating and empty and dark. And what you don't realize is the Buddha didn't advise you to go straight to concentrating the mind. He said to gladden the mind first. So when you find yourself faced with that mind state that feels disorienting, things are calmer than you've noticed. Not only can you go narrow and try to find the breath again, just like a subtle tune, you'd find the bow delicately resting on the strings. But you can also invoke a brightness, a bright note. And if you drop in one word like loving kindness, metta, light, love, it brightens the mind in a way that you wouldn't expect, because when the mind is that calm, it's malleable and suggestible. It's like dropping a bead of golden dye onto a white cloth, and it pervades out. And the mind will become luminous. And often you don't need to do this very much. Often we call this vitaka vichara, directed thought and evaluation. Sometimes you'll drop in one thought, love. And every 2 minutes, that's enough. And just watch the mind resonate with that. Step back, taste it. And the mind will become bright. And then it'll be willing to calm even more and unify into a cohesive, unified solidity that's luminous and bright. But first you have to make it happy enough that it trusts that process. Elizabeth Gilbert in Eat, Pray, Love, which is a great book, said, first you come to this darkness and it seems just like a darkness, but then you realize it's a gateway. Invite something through it. Bring to mind the divine, whatever that means for you. So it can seem like a complicated process, but it's really quite simple. What we're doing is sublimating the mind. We're ushering forth a phase change, where at the beginning, you're following the breath in and out. And this is like a condor beating its wings. You're letting it become more subtle. Then you're becoming aware of the whole body and the whole body of the breath at the same time. Letting things become subtle and calm. This is like a condor soaring, Bhante Analayo says. It stops flapping its wings and you just feel it being borne along. A sense of energy forms and brightness. And then you find suddenly that you're able to transition your awareness to some point of brightness within that, either a sense of uplift at the smile, a sense of pleasure in the hands, a sense of nourishment in the heart, and amplify that through attention until the whole mind becomes luminous and you sense a sense of nourishment and drinking in. After becoming sated with rapture, piti, the mind is luminous, bright, and then you can let that bright luminosity, you won't feel the need to think as much, and you can let the thoughts drop, release, 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 until you're left with just luminous brightness, empty parchment. And if that's disorienting, come back to that gentle sense of the bow on the string, or brighten it with a sense of love, an invocation, and let that new sense of well-being hold the mind into calm. And after the mind is rested in calm, it'll begin to move again, and then it'll see clearly, and you'll have a sense of wealth that is your own. That's an inner wellspring of goodness and coolness. It's a joyful path and one of play, of interest, of exploration. And I know this has gone on for a bit, but I wanted to give one more tool. And this is the route I use. For those, I'm greatly indebted to Jason Bartlett. These are the energies I've worked with for a long time, but I think Jason Bartlett of luminousdhamma.org, he's a local teacher, has come up with the best articulation of these energies I've ever heard. And that's that if you, pana, which is the word for kind of life force, breath or chi, this movement of energy, you can use it as a pathway through these as well. And a way of conceiving of this is there's two main energy centers we can tap into at the beginning of meditation. There's the middle dantian near the heart, right below. You can find it with your middle finger, and sort of pressing where you find a sense of comfort. Or the lower dantian, about 2 finger breadths below your belly button, and a sense of comfort and well-being is there. And what you can do is let the mind do those first 2 steps, the Anapanasati Sutta. Let the mind calm on the breath, coalesce. And then if you're a man, bring your attention to that lower dantian and just do belly breathing. So let the belly rise. You can feel it. Most of us breathe a lot from our ribs, but really try to breathe from the belly and sense the sensation there. And you should start to sense over time a subtle sense of pleasure. And what this is doing is bringing awareness to the breath, harvest the pana, the chi from the breath, and you bring it down here. And in this Taoist conception, this lower half of the body is the water, and you're boiling the water. Just bring awareness there again and again until after a time this pleasure forms. Trust it. And this is rapture. It'll steam, and suddenly you'll feel awareness often rise very quickly up to the crown of the head, and it'll open the crown of the head into a central axis where you'll suddenly be aware of the whole body and this awareness that's light and luminous kind of flowing through you. And you can really trust that. At that point, your job is to trust that energy to circulate. And often what it'll do is it'll circulate up the spine and down the front of the body in what's called the microcosmic orbit, up and down. And you can facilitate this by touching the top of the roof of the mouth with the tongue, just slightly. It's called the magpie bridge. And you can find that that's very helpful in meditation. It keeps you centered. And you can let the awareness circulate, and it'll clean out and unkink the pipes. And if you find if you try to keep all this energy inside of you, it can be a bit much. So really, you can let it expand out. And then over time, it'll coalesce back down and come back to that breath, reboil the water, awareness in the dantian, and then let it steam up and circulate, and that's rapture, moving through the body again. If you're a woman, come instead initially to the heart dantian and cultivate there first. Bring awareness there and find the pleasure subtly. The heart is a delicate place. But over time, that will also do the same thing and begin to steam. And in men, over time, as that cycle repeats, you'll find that lower dantian begin to connect with the middle, and they'll open to each other and begin to operate as one. And then they'll connect to this upper one until you have a central axis of brightness. And with women, that middle dantian will connect to the lower and then also connect to the upper in one clear line. And once again, that's that same process of becoming aware of the whole body, calming, becoming aware of rapture, brightness, happiness, pleasure, and a luminosity of heart. If you do invoke those energies, I would also suggest just making sure you have, if you start to come up against walls, do find a teacher to talk to about it or someone expert in these energies, because they can really run through you very strongly. So Jason Bartlett, or perhaps someone who works with Qigong or Tai Chi a bit as well. But be delicate when you play with those. So I know that's long, and yet I really want to lay out the tools for people, because often, we talk about sila and metta, and often a lot of us are just trying to tread water with our meditation practices back home. And it's really important, don't let this become rote. Find a way to reinvigorate practice. If you need to take a day a week and just do practice to find interest there again, or take 3 retreats a year, come back, find interest. We work in many levels, interpersonal and other ways, cleansing the heart, but finding a source of happiness which is your own and will outlast the body. And the fragility of the outside world gives you a wellspring of happiness, and it provides you clear eyes to see with and a true gift to give. So, wish you all the luck, and thank you for your patience with this talk and the length.
Andamayandhamakataya sadukaram dharamase sadhu 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 anumodami.
Okay. Well, we might have time for one question. Maybe 2. If anyone has one, we can go.
Thanks. Ajahn, just a quick observation. Listening to you, it actually suddenly hit me why we are hell-bent on believing there is such a thing as artificial intelligence. It's the distinction between certainty and ambiguity. Alpha plays a game based on statistical inference. That's a lower form of play to the more elevated forms of play that you're describing. Technologies like Alpha offer us the prospect of certainty. The levels of play that you're describing offer us the certainty of ambiguity, and it's a different level of play.
I think that's really worth saying, and it's also worth saying that LLMs are sankhara, is patterning, as we'd call in Buddhism. And what is amazing about meditation is the human chitta, the human heart, is what a silicon machine will never have, by our conception at least. And when you let go of the sankhara, what's amazing with meditation is you aren't left with nothing. This luminous brightness is waiting for you, and we don't realize it because we've never stopped. We've never let go of staring at the ink and the patterns enough to know what's there waiting if we cultivate it. So I like that, though. I think we had Bernie in the back.
Yes, thank you for the talk. And I'm curious where you see yoga practices fitting in with this. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, thank you. I see them first as a good prerequisite to meditation, or a precursor, just like a cold shower exercise. I know someone who had a great quote, Charles, I think he said, yoga is the the best setting that mistakes itself for the jewel. I thought that was very good. That's very good because it is very helpful, but it is not the end goal, and that's where it misses the plot. I would also say that one of the fascinating things, like for me, learning about this subtle breath body was really key. And I know many practitioners like Ajahn Suchito, Ajahn Jeff, they all teach this way. And when you start exploring the breath body, you find it's pretty much echoed across cultures. These same, in the yogic system, these chakras, in the Chinese system, the Dantians, the microcosmic orbit, it's validating how similar they are. So it was really fun to explore and be like, oh, like this Dantian lower one, it's in almost every conception of the breath, including the yogic. And the Kundalini system, where there's this rising of energy up through the spine, that's very much in the yoga. And people experience this. And if they don't know how to release that pressure, it can kind of pop the top off and be really difficult or mind-blowing, a bit of both. So this is one of the usefulnesses of opening the body, opening those pipes gently. This is a process of gently steaming open the top rather than blowing the top off. It's also the use, this magpie bridge, the tongue against the top of the roof of the mouth, is really helpful, much more than you'd think. It lets the two sides merge, and it lets this energy begin to flow very naturally. So yeah, hatha yoga and poses are useful in that sense, and the more subtle yoga of breath body is fascinating and maps onto the Chinese somewhat. Maybe one more.
That was just action-packed, that talk. I'm going to have to watch it like 6 times now. Thank you. I've never heard the description of pleasure so well done, like, because you started by saying this is a path of pleasure, but pleasure is really a hard thing to navigate, right? So.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
And then just on those 6 things that, you know, like recognize, release, relax, regrin, refocus, and then repeat. That I used that 4 or 5 times, and it was super useful. Mike, one of my questions is, what caused you to give us so much? Like all of these things are so useful.
I know, and it's always a, you know, on one level, I think a Dharma talk is supposed to catalyze something, so don't like overwhelm everyone. On another level, I found myself bereft of tools for years, and so I figure, okay, like they can rewatch the talk, but like the 6. I notice when we haven't actually talked about meditation in a while. It's like, well, we probably should do that. You know, here's the tools again for what you should be trying when you're home, because we all lose sight. Like in LLMs, there's also this thing called exploitation, which is you use a technique that works, versus exploration or entropic normalization. So a little bit of experimentation, and it's very easy for practice to become very rote. There's this narrative of like, just keep doing it. One day something will pop. It's not a good narrative. Like, we do want to be patient, but you want to be playful and find a way that meditating that's engaged. So if things have become dry, read Shyla Catherine's Wisdom Wide and Deep. Read Lee Brasington's The Jhanas. Read Ajahn Brahm, Jhanas, you know, Mindfulness and Beyond, I think it is. Like, read some other version to make it invigorating again, because our meditation is important. 20 minutes a day, basic hygiene, people. And we can access these. Westerners, moderns, as neurotic as we are, at least I am or was, these are not beyond us. But we have to learn how to use the thinking mind instead of just try to cut it off, because it doesn't always work. The 6 R's are from Bhante Vimalarangsi. I just find those useful. Recognize, release, relax, resmile, return, repeat. It's just a good 6. And yeah, the Anapanasati Sutta, enjoy that key leap between following an object and finding some sense of pleasure is the hardest one for people to make. So I really think it's worth emphasizing there. If you're not able to find any of that sense of subtle joy somewhere, keep trying, because that's really, the mind will not only become so calm without that, and a sense of dryness is not a good sign. Boredom sometimes is actually a doorway to something much deeper. Dryness is not good. And so that's why it's so interesting. Piti, which gets translated as rapture, I love the translation of refreshment. That's actually what it is better translated as. And you feel it like, oh, this is really good. And when you're down here with that lower dantian, you'll sense a sense of like nourishing, like you can even imagine putting roots into the earth and just drawing up the water, or the sense of love here. So, yeah, who felt like it was a little too much on the talk, or a little, I don't know. It's all right. Okay, good. Okay, I'll stop apologizing. Way to go, people. Okay. Anyways, good luck, everyone, and don't give up hope. Like, a lot of people, we've been meditating for a long time. This can be fun, and I consider the current moment one of a lot of breakthroughs in meditative practice for the modern thinking mind, because it's taken us a while to translate these samadhi teachings from people like Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Mun that were teaching it to people with just amazing samadhi since childhood. Like you could just give them a meditation word and often it would be enough. To people like us where we grew up thinking an unbelievable amount, and there are techniques that actually use that well, and our wisdom becomes a real power. But we have to learn how to work with the thinking mind and just don't give up. Like there's something there. There's a there. So, okay. So we'll end with the blessing braid. This is just a list of names we want to hold in our hearts and dedicate the goodness of today to. And by the way, mindfulness of breathing, it's Majjhima Nikaya 118. Majjhima Nikaya 118, mindfulness of breathing. That is a sutta worth memorizing. There's been so many times in retreat where I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. And then I'm like, oh, the Buddha told me. It's right here in the Anapanasati Sutta. It's an amazing metric of how we sublimate the mind into more refined states.
Okay, the blessing braid. Kambu, Chanita's mother, is ill. Spread metta from Chanita and Ajahns. Scott and Nicole, final week of Scott's radiation. Spread love from the Ajahns. Lori Moore, passed unexpectedly. Share kindness from Lillian Kirk. Susie Getchman, approaching end of life. Please spread metta. And there's no person in there. Babu, our beloved pet dog, passed away recently. May he get a very good rebirth with healthy body and all the happiness. Please give metta and share merits with our baby, his family. Seth Makabani, remembering a good friend who died 16 years ago this week. May he be at peace, from Karen. Manji Gershik Thompson, emotional disturbances, sensory overwhelm, from Victoria Gershik Thompson, mother.
Would people like to say other names into the space?
My brother David.
David. Bob Coates and Jackie. End of life and facing against that. Tara. Lukács family, who lost a member. Mark M. Mark. Oh, Chitra. Please give her our best. I remember her. Linny, who passed away 6 years ago.
Go online.
The anniversary of my dad's death.
Grandpa Robbie. That's my grandpa. His gift of help for my education was one of the reasons I could ordain. Okay. This is just a way of remembering that our practice is for more than just us, and dedicating to all those who've passed. We'll stay silent for about 20 seconds together. can turn to page 33, Verses of Sharing and Aspiration. If you're joining on Zoom or YouTube, the link to the chanting book should be in the chat or the description. Page 33. Now let's chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. So we like to invite, if you're new, this is your third time or less, so if you've been here under 3 times, or 3 times, so under 4 times, and you're feeling bold, then if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand and maybe even standing up so people can see you, and just say your name and where you heard about us over the gigantic siren in the background right now. You're feeling? Yeah, please, in the back. Can we get one, just sadhu? Actually, let's say, may this be your peaceful day. Let's say that. May this be your peaceful day. What's your name one more time? Harlorraine. It's great to meet you. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. Yeah, my friend texted me about the Walk for Peace monks. He's like, you all need to get a dog. It's like, all right. Right. Thank you. Vanessa, welcome. Aw, 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Are you able to move? We could do our best. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Good. Good. Yeah. Vanessa. Sadhu Shanika. All right, we are over time, so maybe the other people, if you can say your name in just one sentence of where you came from. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. Yeah. Go YouTube. Welcome, David. Well done, Shannon. Thank you, David. Welcome. Okay, 3 big sadhus for all those visiting. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That means, yeah, yeah, that was awesome. Good work, people. So, and once again, we also have Lava visiting. We have, oh my gosh, I just had it this morning. Svetlana, I'm so sorry. And Mark, I believe, or, okay, good. And please just reach out to those who are new and make them feel welcome. We have a potluck after this. Please partake of the food. As many of you know, monastics in Our Lady don't touch money. We don't use money. Everything here is freely offered, including the books in the back. Please take some. Find yourself a name tag so that others can identify you, and actually it is less awkward for everyone. And we encourage you, the first person you talk to, if it's someone you have not spoken to before, that's wonderful. And a good dharmic conversation starter to keep things kind of within the realm of Dharma is just what's been coming up in your week or your month, what's alive for you in the Dharma. See how that goes. Welcome all. It's lovely to have you. Those who want to bow to the Buddha can. And wave goodbye to our friends on Zoom. Those on Zoom can stick around for coffee hour. See you all later.